Tonight, a man will stand face to face with the one who once destroyed his entire life. But this time, he is no longer alone. Derek Thompson stood in the luxurious conference room on the 42nd floor. Outside, the lights of Los Angeles stretched endlessly, like a dazzling sea of stars. His hand trembled slightly as he held the tablet. Inside were the pieces of evidence he had been forced to bury for the past 3 years. Right beside him, Helena Harrington, the most powerful female CEO in California's financial sector, sat upright, her cold gaze fixed on Henry Kim, her potential business partner. Helena's voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. "So what you're saying is, you've never met this man before?" Henry Kim, dressed in an expensive Armani suit, his confident smile still lingering, glanced at Derek. And in that very moment, the mask fell. Across his face flashed shock, panic, then fury. What are you doing here?" Henry blurted out, forgetting the role of the elegant businessman he had been playing. Derek took a deep breath. 3 years of bowing his head to mop floors. 3 years of living in silence, like a ghost. 3 years of watching someone else parade as a success on the back of his own work. But tonight, it would all end. "I'm here," he said, his voice steadier than he ever imagined, "to take back what you stole." But to understand why this moment matters so much, we need to turn back the clock. 6 weeks earlier. The fateful night when a janitor and a billionaire woman first crossed paths, not through words, but through the language of understanding. This is the story of a single father willing to do anything for his little daughter. And it is a story that proves, sometimes, justice comes from places you would never expect. If you believe that justice always finds its way, hit subscribe to follow along with stories that touch the heart. And here's a question for you. Are you willing to pay any price to protect what's right? Even when the whole world turns its back on you? Let's go back to the beginning, where it all started. 3 years ago, Derek Thompson was not a janitor. He had once been the co-founder of a fintech company called Quantum Edge, a trading algorithm startup that even made Wall Street take notice. At 34, with an MIT degree in hand, and a college friend he trusted like a brother, Henry Kim. But more important than his career, Derek had Emily, the wife he loved, and Zoe, his 5-year-old daughter with big brown eyes and a smile that could melt the world. Everything began to change the day the doctor announced that Zoe had progressive hearing loss. Not complete deafness, but serious enough to require hearing aids and learning sign language. "This condition will worsen over time," the doctor said, his voice gentle but firm. "The family needs to prepare for the possibility that she will lose her hearing completely before the age of 10. Derek remembered that night, as if it were yesterday. Zoe was fast asleep in her room. Emily had locked herself in the bathroom sobbing. And he sat on the living room floor, with his laptop open, teaching himself ASL, American Sign Language. Every sign, every gesture. He told himself, if his daughter had to live in a silent world, then he would learn to step into that world with her. But Emily, she could not bear it. "I didn't sign up for this life, Derek," Emily said one rainy October night, her voice cold as if she were reading a contract. "I'm still young. I want a normal family. Not this. Zoe is our normal family." Derek could hardly believe his ears. "She only needs hearing aids and special classes, and lifelong speech therapy, and endless pitying stares." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down. "I'm sorry. I know I'm selfish, but I can't." 2 weeks later, Emily left, not alone. She went with Marcus, a handsome broker at a rival firm. She left behind divorce papers and a 5-year-old child struggling to understand why her mother wasn't coming home anymore. Derek remembered that night like it was carved into stone. He used clumsy signs to answer Zoe. "Where's Mommy?" Zoe signed, eyes brimming with tears. "Mommy needs time alone," Derek signed back, swallowing his tears. "But Daddy is here." "Daddy will always be here." While Derek was clinging to the fragments of his broken family, Henry Kim had already begun quietly destroying their company from within. Everything collapsed on a February day. At 11 p.m., Derek received an email from the lawyer. "Need urgent meeting. There is a serious issue with company accounts." It turned out Henry had transferred $4.3 million from the investment fund into personal accounts. And worse, those accounts were under Derek's name. "You have to believe me," Derek pleaded in the emergency meeting with the board and attorneys. "I don't know anything about these transactions. It was Henry who—" "Derek," Henry interrupted, his voice trembling like an Oscar performance. "I know you've been stressed with Zoe and Emily, but to accuse me of this is too much." "The metadata of the emails," Derek shouted. "Check the IP addresses, the login history. I wasn't even at the office those days. I was taking Zoe to her audiology appointment at UCLA." But Henry had prepared too well. Every digital trace pointed to Derek, verified digital signatures, even an audio recording, Derek's voice, clear as day, talking about moving funds into personal accounts to avoid taxes. A deep fake. Derek knew it instantly. But in 2021, the technology was still so new, no one believed a voice could be faked so convincingly. "I'm sorry, Derek," the board chairman declared coldly, "but the evidence is overwhelming. We have no choice but to refer this to the authorities." Within a week, Derek was arrested on charges of embezzlement and securities fraud. Within a month, every investor pulled out. Quantum Edge collapsed. Within 3 months, even though Henry generously withdrew the lawsuit, Derek's reputation was utterly destroyed. No financial company would hire him. No bank would lend to him. His accounts were frozen. His apartment was seized. And worse than poverty or public humiliation was the way people looked at him, like a traitor, a thief, a man who had deceived everyone. "Daddy," Zoe signed one night as they ate instant noodles in their tiny East LA rental room. "Why does everyone say you're bad?" Derek choked, his hands trembling as he signed back. "Because sometimes good people are accused of bad things. But you know the truth, and that's what matters." Zoe looked at him, her gaze startlingly serious for a 6-year-old. Then she signed, "You're the best daddy in the world." Derek broke down in tears. Tears because he knew that even if his daughter believed him, the world did not care. The world had already passed its judgment, and he, with a hearing-impaired child who needed special care, had no way left to fight. 3 months later, Derek took a night janitor job at Le Bernardin, Beverly Hills. His shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. While he worked, Zoe slept at Mrs. Rosa's, a kind elderly neighbor who babysat for cheap. Every night, Derek scrubbed the gleaming marble floors, cleaned tables where the wealthy dined on meals that cost more than his monthly rent. In the morning, he returned, made breakfast for Zoe, took her to school, then collapsed into sleep for a few hours before repeating the cycle. 3 years passed this way. 3 years of invisibility. 3 years of existence. But not of truly living. Until one September night. Derek saw a woman sitting quietly at a corner table, using sign language to place an order. But the waiter had no idea what she was saying. And in that very moment, Derek's life began to change. Tuesday night in September, 2:15 a.m. Le Bernardin was nearly empty, with only a few familiar tables of the elite. People who never had to worry about waking up early the next morning. Derek was wiping down the bar, his movements mechanical after 3 years of repetition, when he heard the uneasy voice of a young waitress. "I'm so sorry, ma'am." "Let me get the manager." Derek looked up. At the corner table by the window, an older woman sat. Around 60, her silver hair neatly pinned, wearing a simple but elegant dress. She was signing with her hands, clearly in sign language. The waitress only stood frozen, her face filled with panic and helplessness. Derek's chest tightened. He knew that feeling too well, that sense of being trapped in a world where no one understands your language. Just like Zoe, every time she tried to talk to kids at the park and only received puzzled stares, as if she had come from another planet. Before he even thought, Derek put down the rag and hurried toward the table. "Excuse me," he said softly to the waitress. "Let me help." The girl looked at him in surprise. Rarely did a janitor step forward like that, then sighed in relief, nodding gratefully as she stepped back. Derek turned to the woman and signed, "Good evening." "How may I help you?" Her face lit up, disappointment melting into surprise, then into pure joy. "Oh my," she signed with a beaming smile. "Finally, someone understands me. I just wanted to ask if the salmon here is cooked with lemon butter. I'm allergic to citrus." "Yes, ma'am," Derek signed back with a smile. "The salmon is only made with herb butter and lemon. Completely safe. I'll remind the kitchen to be extra careful." "Thank you so much," she signed, her eyes misting. "You don't know how much it means to me to finally have someone truly listen." Derek's throat tightened. "I understand. My daughter uses ASL too." "Your daughter?" Her gaze softened. On the reservation list, Derek read the name, Ruth Harrington. "How old is she?" Ruth signed. 8. Her name's Zoe, a beautiful name. "Zoe means life in Greek." Ruth signed slowly. "You're a good father." Not everyone is willing to learn ASL for their child. Derek didn't know how to respond. It had been so long, 3 years, since anyone had called him a good man, and actually meant it. "Derek." A cold voice cut through the moment. His heart jumped. Gerald, the night manager, stood there with a scowl. And beside him, Derek instantly recognized the woman, though he had never met her in person. Helena Harrington, CEO of Harrington Capital. The press once called her California's Wall Street Queen. Stern, sharp, uncompromising. And of course, the woman Derek had just been talking to, Ruth, was her mother. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Derek said nervously. "I was only trying to help." "You left your post for this?" Gerald snapped, his voice harsh. "You're a janitor, not a waiter." "Wait." Everyone turned. Ruth was signing rapidly, her face furious. "What's she saying?" Helena asked, her tone softening. "My mother says," Helena translated, a flicker of surprise in her eyes, "that this man is the only one here who treated her like a human being, not like a problem to be solved." She turned to Derek. "You know ASL?" "Yes, ma'am." Derek tried to keep his voice steady. "Where did you learn it?" A simple question, but to Derek, it felt like his past being stripped bare. At last, he exhaled. "Self-taught. For my daughter, Helena studied him, the eyes of a CEO who had stared down hundreds of rivals, analyzing every movement, every breath. Your daughter is hearing impaired too?" "Hearing loss, ma'am. She wears hearing aids." In that moment, Helena's gaze softened ever so slightly. Just for a split second. But Derek noticed. It wasn't pity. It was deep empathy. "Sit down," Helena said, after Ruth signed a request. My mother rarely asks for anything. When she does, I listen. And so Derek, a night shift janitor, sat at the table with Ruth and Helena Harrington. Gerald could only stand helpless, then storm away, not forgetting to cast Derek a warning glare. "I want to hear about Zoe," Ruth signed, her eyes sparkling. Derek told the story. He told of the day Zoe was diagnosed, of learning ASL, of the first time she perfectly signed "Daddy, I love you." Ruth listened intently, nodding occasionally, sometimes signing questions. Helena remained silent, but her eyes were not cold. They were full of curiosity, concern. "Disability does not make us weaker," Ruth signed. "It makes us stronger. Zoe is lucky to have you." "No, ma'am," Derek signed slowly. "I'm the lucky one to have her." Helena observed in silence, but in her eyes Derek caught something strange, as if, for the first time, someone was seeing him not as a failed janitor, but as a father. Before leaving, Ruth signed one last sentence quickly. Helena's eyebrows rose slightly. "My mother would like to invite you and Zoe to our home this Sunday." 2 o'clock, Derek was stunned. "I would be truly honored." Helena held out her phone. "Your number. I'll send you the address." When Derek's fingers brushed against Helena's hand, a spark shot down his spine. For a brief moment, their eyes met. No social classes, no roles, just two human beings, quietly recognizing something in each other. "Sunday," Helena said softly. "Be on time." Derek returned to his mop, but his hands wouldn't stop trembling. He had no idea that this seemingly brief encounter would change everything. And he also didn't know that at that very moment, in a luxurious downtown LA office, Henry Kim, the man who had ruined his life, was negotiating the biggest deal of the year with Harrington Capital. The wheel of fate had begun to turn. Sunday arrived faster than Derek expected. "Daddy," Zoe signed as he fumbled with her hair, something he was never good at. "Why do we have to dress up so nicely?" "Because today we're meeting someone special," Derek signed. "Her name is Ruth. She's also hearing impaired, like you, and she really wants to meet you." Zoe's eyes lit up. "Really? She uses ASL too?" "All her life. She can teach you many things." They took the bus. Derek still couldn't afford a car, to Bel Air. Zoe gaped at the increasingly massive, luxurious houses. "Do rich people live here, Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Are they happier than us?" The question stopped Derek short. How could he explain to a child that happiness doesn't come from big houses or fancy cars, when he himself was still struggling every day? At last, he signed, "Happiness doesn't come from wealth. It comes from the people we love. And I have you, so I'm the happiest man alive." Zoe smiled. "And I have you. So I'm the second happiest." The Harrington estate appeared. Not ostentatious, but refined and elegant. A world apart from the East LA rental. Helena opened the door. No business suit this time, but jeans and a cashmere sweater. Still expensive, but more approachable. "On time," she said. It was unclear whether it was praise or just a statement. "My mother's waiting in the back garden." Zoe shyly hid behind her father. Helena bent down, her expression softening. "Hello," she said slowly, so Zoe could lip read, then added in sign, awkward but sincere. "Your name is Zoe, right?" Zoe's eyes widened. "You know sign too?" "A little. My mother taught me when I was young. But I'm not as good as you," Zoe beamed, her radiant smile spreading. Derek saw Helena smile back, a smile unlike any he'd ever seen in glossy magazines. In the garden, Ruth was already seated under a white gazebo. She opened her arms in welcome. "Derek! And this must be Zoe." At first Zoe was shy, But when Ruth began signing stories from her childhood about school for the hearing impaired, about struggles and joys alike, the girl quickly opened up. Helena stood beside Derek, quietly observing. "She's adorable," she said softly. "Like you." Derek was taken aback. Before he could answer, Helena asked directly, "Where's her mother?" "She left," Derek said simply. "She couldn't accept having a hearing-impaired child." Helena was silent for a moment, then bluntly, "Then she's a fool." The words stunned Derek. Then he laughed. The first genuine laugh in months. "Zoe's lucky to have you," Helena continued. "Not every father learns an entire new language just to talk with his daughter." "I'd do anything for her," Derek replied, simple but sincere. Helena studied him for a long moment. "What did you do before working at Le Bernardin?" Here it was, the question Derek dreaded most. But Helena's eyes were too direct, too perceptive for him to lie. "I used to work in finance, algorithm engineer, co-founded a startup." "Then why?" Helena hesitated. "Because I was accused of embezzlement," Derek said flatly. "A friend, a partner, framed me with evidence that made me look like a thief. The charges were dropped, but my reputation was destroyed. Nobody hires someone branded a fraud." Helena froze. "What's that partner's name?" Derek hesitated, but then, seeing her gaze, he whispered, "Henry Kim. Quantum Edge Financial." Helena's face went pale. "What is it?" Derek pressed. "You know him?" "Not just know." Helena took a deep breath. "Henry Kim is negotiating a merger with Harrington Capital. It's going to be the biggest deal of the year." Derek's entire world crashed down. Henry Kim, the man who had ruined him, was now on the brink of partnering with Helena Harrington. And Derek understood one painful truth. Who would believe a janitor? Standing against a celebrated businessman? No one. That night, Helena couldn't sleep. She lay in her spacious bedroom, eyes fixed on the ceiling, her mind filled with images. The man whose eyes held far too much pain, the little girl with the radiant smile, the way Derek Thompson looked at Zoe as if she were his entire universe, and the way he spoke, the vocabulary of an educated person, the reasoning of a financial engineer, nothing like a janitor at all. But above all, the name, Henry Kim. At 2 a.m., Helena opened her laptop. She didn't believe in blind intuition, but she believed in data. And in Derek's story, there was something that didn't align with Henry Kim's perfect image. She started with public records. Quantum Edge Financial, founded in 2019, bankrupt in 2021. Co-founder, Henry Kim. No mention of Derek Thompson. Helena wasn't one to give up easily. She accessed California's business registration database, tracing archived versions. And then, in the original filing from March 2019, the truth appeared. Quantum Edge Financial LLC co-founders, Henry Kim and Derek Thompson Equity, split 50-50. But in the amendment from August 2021, just 2 months after the embezzlement scandal, Quantum Edge Financial LLC, CEO founder, Henry Kim, former employee, Derek Thompson, engineer, 2019-2021. From co-founder to employee, from 50% equity to 0. Helena kept digging. The press wrote, "Senior engineer Derek Thompson charged with embezzling $4.3 million. CEO Henry Kim uncovered the misconduct. Charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. Kim declares he doesn't want to ruin the life of a single father." The last line sent a chill down Helena's spine. A single father. That meant Henry knew about Zoe, knew everything, and still struck. Helena moved on to the patent section. There were as many as 17 patents Henry filed from 2021 to 2024, all related to trading algorithms, each patent worth millions of dollars. She randomly opened one, U.S. Patent number 1093, predictive algorithm for high-frequency trading based on multivariable regression analysis. Inventor, Henry Kim. Filing date, September 15, 2021. Approval date, March 22, 2022. But the PDF file's metadata said otherwise. File creation date, February 14, 2020. Original author, D. Thompson, Quantum Edge. Last edit, September 12, 2021. The author had been removed from the file. Helena sat bolt upright. This wasn't a coincidence. This was systematic fraud. She checked 5 more patents. All had the same pattern. Original files from 2019 to 2020 listed D. Thompson, then were edited and refiled under Henry Kim's name in 2021 to 2022. At 4:30 a.m., Helena called James Porter, the general counsel. "Helena?" James's voice was groggy. "Good Lord, at this hour?" "James, I need you to vet someone. Completely discreet. Name's Henry Kim, CEO of Quantum Edge. Henry Kim? Our merger partner?" "Yes, and precisely because of that. I suspect he stole intellectual property from a former partner and built his entire company on fraud." A heavy silence. "If that's true, and we've already signed the deal," James said quietly, "then Harrington Capital will be tied to a company that stole IP. We'll be sued. Our reputation will collapse." "I'll start first thing this morning," James replied. "But Helena, if he made it through initial due diligence, then he's very good at covering his tracks. But no one's perfect. Find me a crack." Helena hung up. Dawn began to break over Los Angeles. She thought of Derek, how he sat in the afternoon light patiently signing each word for Zoe. How he spoke to her mother, with simple respect. The way he looked at Helena, not like a CEO, not like a powerful woman he needed to impress, but simply as a human being. "Damn it," Helena whispered. Because she realized she cared about Derek more than she should. She cared about whether he would be vindicated. She cared about justice. And that was dangerous. In business, emotion equates to bad decisions. But what if emotion was the only thing allowing her to see the truth? A week passed, and Helena deliberately stayed away from Le Bernardin. She was afraid that if she saw Derek, she would lose focus. But Ruth was different. "You're avoiding him," Ruth signed over Sunday breakfast. "Why?" "What are you talking about?" Helena pretended to concentrate on her coffee. "Derek. You haven't invited them back. I like Zoe. I want to see her again." "Mother, I'm busy." "There's a major deal." "For what?" "To avoid a good man." Ruth signed, her gaze sharp as a blade. "Helena, you're 39. You have an empire, you have success. But are you happy?" Helena set her cup down hard. "Happiness is not my priority." "That is the problem." Ruth signed slowly, emphasizing each word. "You're afraid. Just like your father was afraid when he found out I was deaf. He thought I was a burden. And then he left. You never told me that." "Because you never asked." Ruth gave a sad smile. "He didn't leave because he didn't love you. He left because he wasn't strong enough to love a deaf woman." Helena felt her throat tighten. "Derek isn't like that," Ruth continued. "He doesn't see disability as a burden. He learned an entire new language so his daughter wouldn't feel alone. That is real love. And you, Helena, you deserve a love like that." Helena was silent. All these years, she had built walls around her heart. The 7-year-old girl abandoned by her father still lived inside her. The teenage girl who heard whispers, poor thing, a deaf mother, a father who left, was still there. And the grown woman, afraid to love, because she feared being hurt, was still there, too. Invite them to dinner, Ruth signed, this Friday. I'll cook. You can't cook. Then you cook, or order in. I don't care, but invite them. For you, not for me. That night, Helena drafted a message to Derek. Her fingers paused several times before she sent it. My mother misses Zoe. Dinner at our house this Friday, 7 p.m. Are you free? The reply arrived 5 minutes later. 5 minutes that felt like an hour. I'd be honored. Zoe misses Mrs. Ruth, too. Should I bring anything? Helena smiled. Just come. And Derek, thank you for trusting me. A pause. Then her phone buzzed. Thank you for listening. Not many people do that. Friday came. Derek stood at the Harringtons' door in the only dress shirt he had left from his former life. A bit loose because he'd lost weight, but freshly laundered and neatly pressed. You look handsome, Daddy, Zoe signed, wearing the little dress Mrs. Rosa had given her. So do you, my little princess, Derek signed, adjusting her hair bow. The door opened. Not Helena, but Ruth. You're here, she signed, pulling Zoe in. Zoe, I have something to show you. Zoe looked to her father for permission. Derek nodded. The two of them disappeared, leaving him alone in the foyer. My mother has no subtlety at all. Derek turned around. Helena stood on the staircase, wearing a simple navy dress. Not corporate, not fussy. But it made Derek catch his breath. You look beautiful, he blurted, then felt foolish. But Helena smiled, a genuine smile. Thank you. You too. The air stilled for a moment. Then Helena came down. Derek, I need to talk about Henry. About the deal. About everything she told him. About the metadata. About the amended filings. About evidence not yet enough to convict, but enough to kill the deal. And for the first time, Derek heard it straight from Helena. I believe you. A glimmer of hope returned. But at the same time, Helena warned him. Henry was too skilled at concealment. More evidence was needed. And she had a lead, a former engineer named Miguel Santos, who had just resigned for ethical reasons and still had emails Henry sent. Emails instructing them to edit metadata before filing the patents. Derek was stunned. That was direct evidence. A smoking gun. On Monday, James will arrange a meeting with Miguel. Will you come? Helena asked. Derek looked at the woman before him, the one risking her reputation, her career, and hundreds of millions of dollars to help him reclaim justice. Why? He asked. Why are you doing all this for me? Helena stepped closer. Because for the past 3 years, I've met hundreds of entrepreneurs. They all wanted something from me. Money, connections, power. Then I met a man mopping a restaurant floor who didn't know who I was, and he spent 15 minutes talking to my mother. Simply because it was the right thing to do. Her voice softened, trembling slightly. That's when I knew you were different. And I wasn't wrong. Zoe and Ruth came downstairs, laughter filling the house. Zoe signed excitedly. Mrs. Ruth says next week she'll teach me to make cupcakes. Derek looked at his beaming daughter, then at Helena. In that moment, he knew, whether or not Henry was brought down, whatever the future held, this moment, here, was worth more than anything. Monday, he said. I'll be there. Helena nodded. For the first time, she held out her hand. Not a business handshake, but like a promise. Derek took it, and they both knew. Something had begun. Something bigger than justice. Perhaps the beginning of love. Monday, 10 a.m. Morrison and Associates Law Offices on the 28th floor, downtown L.A. Derek sat in the luxurious conference room, the kind of room he'd been familiar with 3 years ago, but that now made him feel like an outsider. Beside him were Helena and James Porter, a silver-haired attorney with eyes sharp as a scalpel. Across from them sat Miguel Santos. Miguel looked much older than the last time Derek had seen him. Gray at the temples, deep lines etched around his eyes, but his gaze was the same. Honest, tired, laden with guilt. "Derek," Miguel's voice was hoarse. "Brother, I'm sorry. I should have spoken up long ago." "Why only now?" Derek began, then stopped. Too many emotions, anger, relief, hope, surged at once. "Because I was a coward," Miguel said plainly. "Because I have a wife and 2 kids about to start college. Because Henry paid me $250,000 a year, more than anyone would pay a 50-year-old engineer. Because I convinced myself that staying silent wasn't exactly collusion." "But it is collusion," Helena said, her tone cold, not judgmental, simply the truth. "It is," Miguel nodded, staring down at the table. "For 3 years, I haven't slept through a single night. Every time I saw a patent with Henry's name on it, things I knew Derek had created, I felt a part of me die." "So, why now?" James asked, pen poised. "Why did you quit last month and decide to speak up?" Miguel took a USB drive from his pocket. "Because Henry did it again, to a young engineer named Sarah Chen. She's 26, fresh out of MIT, incredibly talented. She developed an AI algorithm that predicts market volatility with 87% accuracy." "Let me guess," Helena said. "Henry stole her work." "Worse. Henry fired her for poor performance, forced her to sign a severance with an NDA, then filed a patent under his own name." Miguel looked straight at Derek. "That's when I realized, if I kept quiet, 3 years from now there'd be another Miguel Santos sitting here saying, 'I knew the truth about Sarah,' but stayed silent." He slid the USB toward James. "Everything's on this. Emails Henry sent me instructing, adjust the metadata. Detailed directions on how to remove Derek's name from the original files. Internal meeting minutes with audio recordings where Henry explicitly says, 'We need to eliminate all traces of Thompson before we go public.' Why did you keep these?" Helena narrowed her eyes slightly. "You know these are criminal evidence." "Insurance," Miguel replied simply. "I don't trust Henry. If anything happened, I needed something to protect myself. At first I planned to use it only if Henry turned on me. But then I saw Sarah. A young woman destroyed the way Derek was, and I couldn't stay silent." James plugged in the USB and opened the folders. His eyes skimmed rapidly through the files. The stern look shifted to surprise, then to satisfaction. "This is—" James exhaled. "Irrefutable evidence. Emails with Henry's digital signature, original metadata, meeting transcripts with audio." He looked up at Miguel. "Do you realize you've just given me enough to indict Henry Kim for fraud, theft of intellectual property, and money laundering?" "I do." Miguel turned to Derek. "I also know nothing can make up for the 3 years you lost, but at least the truth will come out." Derek's throat tightened. 3 years of suspicion. 3 years living like a ghost. Now, with black and white evidence in front of him, he felt a massive weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, Miguel." Miguel nodded, eyes reddening. "I only regret not doing it sooner." Helena rose decisively. "James, prepare the file. I want to meet Henry Kim this weekend, formally." "And the merger?" James asked carefully. "Cancel it." Immediately, Helena didn't hesitate. Draft a notice to investors. Harrington Capital doesn't partner with criminals. News of Harrington Capital canceling the deal with Quantum Edge spread quickly through the financial world. By Tuesday afternoon, Bloomberg was running the headline, Harrington Capital withdraws from $820 million deal, citing due diligence concerns. Helena's phone buzzed non-stop. The board, investors, partners, everyone wanted to know why she walked away from the year's biggest deal. The emergency board meeting took place that evening. Helena sat at the head of the table, facing 7 expressions that mixed worry and anger. $820 million, said Richard Cole, the ever-skeptical CFO, tensely. Helena, that's $820 million. And you canceled over due diligence concerns without consulting the board? I canceled, Helena said calmly, because Quantum Edge is built on stolen intellectual property. If we buy it, within 6 months we'll face lawsuits from the rightful owners. Legal costs, damages, and reputational harm will far exceed $820 million. Do you have proof? Another member asked. Helena nodded to James. He presented Miguel's emails, metadata analysis, meeting recordings. The more they listened, the graver their faces grew. Good God, someone murmured. Henry Kim is a fraud. Not only that, James added. We found at least 3 other instances where Henry stole employees' work. Sarah Chen is only the latest. Richard still wasn't convinced. Fine. Henry's a fraud. But that's his problem, not ours. We can still buy the company at a discount, fire Henry, and keep the assets. Those assets don't belong to us, Helena said bluntly. They belong to the people who created them. And I'm not building Harrington Capital on theft. Sounds noble, Richard sneered, but this is business, not charity. Shareholders don't care about ethics. They want returns. Then they should care about not being sued into oblivion, Helena replied, her voice icy. Richard, if you want to build an empire on the bones of innocence, kindly submit your resignation. I don't work with people who lack ethics. The room fell silent. Richard stared at Helena, weighing whether to challenge her. In the end, he backed down. Fine, he said. But if this decision hits the stock price, don't say I didn't warn you. The meeting adjourned. James followed Helena out. You know Richard won't let this go, he said quietly. He'll try to unseat you. Let him try. Helena pressed the elevator button, exhausted. James, I've built this firm from nothing over 30 years. I'm not letting a greedy CFO wreck it. That's not what worries me. James paused. Helena, are you sure this decision isn't influenced by personal feelings? What do you mean? I mean Derek Thompson. You met him. You believe him. And now you're staking the firm to help him. James spoke gently but firmly. I'm not saying that's wrong. But be certain this is the right business decision, not just because you feel responsible. Helena was silent for a long moment. James, if I said it's partly because of Derek, would you think I'm weak? No, I think you're human. James smiled. But know exactly what you're doing. Because once we go up against Henry Kim, there's no way back. I know, Helena said, and I'm ready. That night, Helena went to the small rental in East L.A. for the first time to see Derek. Derek opened the door, surprised and slightly flustered. What are you doing here? I need to talk. Helena glanced inside. A tiny, simple, but tidy room. One bed, a small wooden table with an old laptop, a plain wardrobe. On the wall were Zoe's drawings, a house, father and daughter, a son and green trees. Zoe's asleep, Derek said softly, stepping out and pulling the door nearly shut. "Let's talk out here." They sat on the steps outside. The LA night was warm. The sound of traffic drifted from afar. "The board wants me to go back to the deal," Helena said plainly. "They think I'm making a huge mistake." "And what do you think?" Derek looked at her. "I think they're more afraid of losing money than of doing wrong." Helena sighed. "But Derek, you need to understand. If we take this path, publicly accusing Henry, your life will get very difficult. Henry will strike back. He has lawyers, money, connections. He'll try to destroy you again." "He can't destroy what's already broken," Derek said, his voice sad but steady. "That's not true." Helena turned fully to him, eyes resolute. "You're not broken. You were knocked down, but not broken. There's a big difference." "You don't understand," Derek gave a bitter laugh. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything. Waking up every morning, watching your kid eat instant noodles because her dad can't afford more. Having to tell her you can't see the audiologist because you don't have insurance. Having to—" His voice caught. Helena lightly placed her hand on his. "You're right," she said softly. "I don't know. I was born into wealth. I've never worried about rent or meals, but I know what it's like to lose someone you love, to be betrayed by someone you once trusted. And I know that sometimes choosing between safety and justice is the hardest choice of all." Derek looked at her delicate hand resting on his calloused one. "You're risking too much for me," he said. "Not for you," Helena corrected gently. "For what's right. And, fine, maybe partly for you." She smiled. "But mainly because I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I let Henry walk free. What if everything fails? What if he wins? Then at least we'll know we tried. And that's more than most people." Helena gave his hand a slight squeeze. "I can't promise victory, can't promise justice will surely come. But I promise this. This time, you won't be alone." No matter what happens, Derek looked into those hazel green eyes, honest, steadfast. He understood. This wasn't just a war with Henry, but a journey to find himself again, to reclaim the dignity he thought he'd lost. "All right," he said. "We do it." Helena smiled, a truly warm smile. "Then Thursday morning, we meet Henry. James is getting things ready. I'll be ready." They sat a while longer, shoulder to shoulder, gazing at stars blurred by the city's haze. "Helena," Derek said softly, "when this is all over, whatever the outcome, I want you to know. You're believing me, fighting for me. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." Helena turned, her face inches from his. "Derek." No one could tell who moved first. They kissed, gentle, tentative, full of promises not yet spoken. When they drew apart, Helena chuckled, cheeks flushed. "Was that a good idea?" "Probably not," Derek admitted, "but I don't regret it." "Neither do I." Helena stood, smoothing her hair. "I'm going. Meeting with the lawyers tomorrow." "Helena," Derek called as she stepped down. "Thank you. For everything." She glanced back, her eyes soft in the night. "Don't thank me yet." The hard part's still ahead, and she was right. Because at that very moment, in a plush downtown office, Henry Kim took a call from an insider at Harrington Capital. "Helena Harrington is investigating you. She has Miguel Santos, the emails, and Derek Thompson." Henry set the phone down. His face went blank for a beat. Then a smile emerged, cold and dangerous. "Well then," he said to the empty room, "let the war begin." Thursday morning. Harrington Capital offices. Conference room on the 40th floor. Derek stood in front of the building, looking up at the glass mass glittering under the California sun. 3 years ago, he used to walk into places like this as the co-founder of a promising tech company. Today, he walked in as a man reclaiming his life. "Are you ready?" Helena appeared beside him, wearing a navy suit, her familiar battle attire. "No," Derek admitted, "but I don't think I'll ever be completely ready." Helena squeezed his hand, a quick, discreet gesture, but enough to transmit strength. "Remember, we have evidence. We have the truth. Henry only has lies." They entered the elevator and went up to the 40th floor. James Porter was already waiting in the conference room, along with 2 attorneys and a recording technician. "Everything's set," James reported. "Henry Kim will arrive at 10 a.m. with his lawyer, Richard Steele from Morrison and Beck." "They don't know what we have." "Good," Helena nodded. "Let them be confident." Confident people tend to slip. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. Henry Kim walked in, impeccably dressed in a Brioni suit, hair neatly slicked back, wearing a confident smile. Behind him was Richard Steele, a tall, silver-haired lawyer with the face of someone used to winning. But when Henry saw Derek, his step faltered for a beat. Shock, then anger, and fear? "Derek," Henry kept his courteous tone. "What a surprise." "I think so too," Derek replied, calmer than he expected. For 3 years he'd imagined this moment, facing Henry and speaking the truth. And in reality, the rage didn't explode like he thought. What remained was fatigue and resolve. "Mr. Kim," Helena began, her voice cold and professional, "thank you for coming. We have some serious issues regarding the merger." "I understand Ms. Harrington has withdrawn." Henry sat down, still at ease. "I hope we can clear up the misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," James said, opening his laptop. "We discovered that Quantum Edge's core assets, 17 trading algorithm patents, were not developed by you." Richard Steele immediately cut in. "That is a serious allegation. I hope you have evidence." "We do." James rotated the screen. "Emails from you, Mr. Kim, to Miguel Santos, senior engineer, dated September 12, 2021. You wrote, quote, "Miguel, need you to adjust the metadata in the algorithm files before filing. Remove any reference to D. Thompson. Ensure logs only show me as creator." Silence. Henry looked at the screen, his face unchanged, but his eyes clearly calculating an escape. "Emails can be forged," Richard countered. "They can," James nodded. "Except these bear Mr. Kim's digital signature, verified by Quantum Edge's server. And we have 47 similar emails, plus an internal meeting recording from September 8, 2021, where Mr. Kim explicitly says, 'We have to eliminate Thompson completely. No one can know he was ever a co-founder.'" Henry still said nothing, but his hand clenched the armrest. "That's not all," Helena continued. "We have documents showing you systematized this behavior. Sarah Chen, David Rodriguez, Priya Mehta, at least 3 other employees whose work was stolen, who were fired on false pretenses, and whose patents were filed under your name, Ms. Harrington." Richard tried to regain control. "These allegations are—" "The truth," Derek spoke up for the first time, drawing everyone's eyes to him. "And you know it's the truth, Henry. You know because you planned it step by step, exploiting me at my weakest. Zoe had just been diagnosed, Emily had left, to steal everything I created." Henry finally spoke, chillingly calm. "Derek, I understand you've had a hard time. I truly sympathize. But what you're fabricating—" "Fabricating?" The 3 years of pent-up bitterness caught in Derek's throat. "You call the 17 patents I developed fabrication? You call the metadata proving I'm the original author fabrication?" You call your own emails ordering my name deleted fabrication? Derek, Helena set a light hand on his shoulder, reminding him to stay calm. Fine. Henry switched tactics, his tone softening. Let's suppose, purely suppose, there were some misunderstandings about Derek's contributions. We can resolve this civilly. Derek, I'll compensate you. Add your name to the patents as co-inventor, 10% equity, and $5 million in cash. The room fell silent. $5 million. A number that could change Derek and Zoe's lives. Derek looked at Helena. She only looked back, saying nothing, letting him choose. No, Derek said at last. I don't want your money, Henry. I want justice. Justice! Henry laughed coldly. Derek, in the real world there's no justice. There are winners and losers. And you, my old friend, lost 3 years ago. No, Helena spoke, her voice like steel. 3 years ago, you cheated. Today, we correct that Richard tried once more. Ms. Harrington, if you make these accusations public without being able to prove— We can prove it, James concluded. In court, if necessary. We have sufficient grounds to indict Mr. Kim for fraud, theft of intellectual property, document falsification, and possibly money laundering. If Mr. Kim chooses to fight, Richard growled. We're ready, Helena replied. But perhaps Mr. Kim should consider. A public trial means the press will dissect every detail. The patents are withdrawn. His company collapses, and he faces prison. Henry looked around, at Derek, Helena, James, the attorneys, the recorder. Then he stood. This meeting is over, he said icily. Richard, let's go. Henry? Derek called as Henry's hand touched the doorknob. Just one question. Do you regret it? Destroying the life of a friend? Of a single father who once trusted you like a brother? Henry paused and turned. There was no remorse in his eyes, only pure rage. Regret? Henry curled his lip. Derek, you've always been weak. Emotions drive your decisions. Zoe, Emily, morality. They all slowed you down. I did what was necessary to succeed. If I could do it over, I'd do exactly the same. In that case, Helena said coldly, see you in court. The door shut with a thud. Derek sank into his chair, his hands shaking. He'd imagined this moment for 3 years, and the truth was that Henry neither apologized nor regretted anything. There was no humanity left. You did very well, Helena said softly, sitting beside him. I wanted to take the $5 million, Derek confessed. Part of me wanted to, just to end it all. But you didn't. Because you know there are things more important than money? Or because I'm a fool? Derek laughed wearily. No, James said from the head of the table. You refused, because if you accepted, you'd also be accepting Henry's version of the story. It would mean Zoe would grow up believing her father was compensated for a misunderstanding, not that he fought for the truth. Derek stayed silent, but inside he knew James was right. Henry Kim was not the type to give up. 3 days later, Zoe's school called. Mr. Thompson? The principal's voice was tense. We need you to come immediately. There's a serious issue concerning Zoe. Derek's heart almost stopped. Is she okay? Is she hurt? No, but there are allegations regarding Zoe's living environment. Derek abandoned his shift and rushed to the school. In the principal's office, there wasn't just the principal, but also a woman in a black suit wearing a badge from Child Protective Services, CPS. Mr. Thompson, the principal began with difficulty, CPS received an anonymous report. Substandard housing, lack of appropriate medical care for her hearing condition, and insufficient financial ability to raise a child with disabilities. Derek's world reeled. Who reported this? Anonymous, the CPS officer replied. But we must investigate every allegation. Where's Zoe? She's in class. Please understand, we're not assuming you're a bad father, but our responsibility is to ensure a safe, appropriate living environment. The room is small, old, but clean, Derek nearly cried out. Zoe has food, a warm bed, and love. I work all night, so she has everything. As for medical care, the woman continued, still in an official tone, records show Zoe missed 2 audiology appointments in 6 months. Because I don't have insurance, Derek said in despair. I'm saving up. I'll take her when I have enough. Mr. Thompson, her tone softened. I'm not saying you're a bad person, but sometimes love alone isn't enough. A child with special needs requires more. No, Derek shook his head violently. You can't take my daughter. Zoe needs me. This is only an open investigation, she reassured. Someone will conduct a home visit this week. If everything is fine, Zoe stays with you. And if not, the answer lay in the silence. Leaving the school, Derek called Helena, his hands trembling so much he had to dial 3 times to get it right. Henry, he said when she picked up, Henry is going after Zoe. What? Helena froze. Derek told her everything. CPS, the allegations, the risk of losing custody. Damn it, Helena blurted, the first time he'd heard her swear. Henry's move. He wants you to drop the case by hitting what you value most. And he might succeed. Derek's voice broke. Helena, I can't risk losing Zoe. Justice, truth. None of it matters if she isn't with me. Listen to me. Helena's voice turned firm. We'll fight. I'll call the best family lawyer in the city. We'll prove the accusations baseless. What if it's not enough? A brief pause. Then we'll make it enough. Derek, trust me. That night, lying next to a sleeping Zoe, Derek wasn't sure trust would be enough. The CPS inspection took place on Wednesday. Derek cleaned every corner meticulously, not because it was dirty, but because he wanted perfection. Zoe's clothes were neatly folded. The fridge was full. Helena had quietly transferred money, despite his objections. The inspector was a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen, unrelated to Emily. She walked around the room, taking notes, asking questions. Where does Zoe sleep? On the bed. I sleep on a mattress on the floor. Why aren't there 2 beds? The room only fits 1 bed. Zoe always gets the good bed. That's my priority, she wrote, her face neutral. Mr. Thompson, how did you end up in this situation? I see you used to be a financial engineer. And Derek told her. Everything. Quantum Edge, Henry, the fabricated allegations, 3 years in the shadows. As he spoke, he cried. The tears he'd held back for 3 years finally spilling out. I know this room isn't perfect, he said. Zoe deserves better. But I love her more than anything. Every morning I wake up for her smile. I can't lose her. Mrs. Chen set down her pen and looked at him. Her gaze had softened. Mr. Thompson, she said gently, in 15 years doing this job, I've met many bad parents. Neglectful, abusive, who see their children as burdens. She paused. You are not one of them. So I will write that although living conditions are not ideal, the child is loved, cared for, and prioritized. I recommend closing the case. Derek nearly collapsed with relief. But, she continued, you need improvements. Zoe must attend audiology appointments. She needs health insurance. And this room is too small for 2 people. I know. I'm trying. I can see you're trying. And that's what matters. She stood. I'll send the report within 2 days. She left. Derek sat down on the floor and cried, from relief, exhaustion, and a newly kindled resolve. That evening, Helena stopped by with Mrs. Ruth and Zoe. The three had spent the entire afternoon together. "Daddy!" Zoe ran in, signing excitedly. "Mrs. Ruth taught me to bake. Next week, Sister Helena's taking me to the movies." Derek looked over at Helena. She stood in the doorway, her expression somber. "Thank you," he whispered, "for keeping her away from all of this." "Derek," Helena stepped in after Zoe and Mrs. Ruth went inside, "we need to talk." The way she said it made Derek's heart sink. "The board voted," she said softly. "Richard Cole persuaded enough people. They want me to withdraw from the case against Henry." "Oh." The glimmer of hope went out. "I said no." Derek looked up, stunned. "I said, if you want me to quit, fire me. And if they fire me, I'll resign and pull 40% of the shares. Harrington Capital will collapse." "Helena, you can't." "I can." "And I did?" She took his hand. "They're adjourning for 3 days to reconsider their position. But I know they'll cave. Lose me, and the firm loses more than a single deal. And if they don't cave," Helena smiled, tired but genuine, "then I will be unemployed. Maybe I'll apply as a waitress. The restaurant's hiring, I hear." Despite everything, Derek burst out laughing. "You'd be the worst waitress in history." "Maybe. But at least I'd know I did the right thing." They stood there, hand in hand. Derek realized he loved this woman. Not because of wealth or power, but because she dared to stake everything on what she believed. On him. "If this costs you everything, I still have what matters." She looked straight into his eyes. "I have truth. I have integrity. And I have you." Before Derek could respond, a noise from the inner room cut in. Zoe ran out, eyes shining. "Daddy, Mrs. Ruth says next week we'll make pizza at her house. I get to shape my own pizza." Derek knelt to her level. "That's wonderful, Princess." "But it's late now. Time for bed." "I'm not sleepy," Zoe pouted. Helena signed to Zoe. "If you sleep early, next week I'll take you to Disney." "Deal?" Zoe looked at her father, then at Helena, and nodded. "Deal." Zoe went into the room. Mrs. Ruth sat reading, signing a story to her. Derek and Helena stood on the tiny balcony, just big enough for two. "You're good with her," Derek said softly. "Zoe makes everything easier. She's special." Helena leaned on the railing, looking at the city night. "Derek, I need to say this before we go any further." "Further?" "With the lawsuit." "And?" "With us," Helena turned back, her gaze serious. "James confirmed. Henry is preparing to strike back. He hired a major PR firm to deny the accusations. He's ready to burn millions to drag out litigation until opponents are exhausted." "I'm not surprised." "There's more." Helena hesitated. "Our source says Henry will smear you personally. He's hired investigators to dig into your past. Anything he can use." Derek gave a bitter laugh. "No need to dig. My past is a public mess." "Not all. He's trying to pull Emily in," Helena said quietly. "Your ex-wife. He wants Emily to testify that you're unfit as a father." Derek felt his blood freeze. "Emily would never—" "She left Zoe once," Helena said frankly. "James's intel says she's in financial trouble. Marcus, the man she left you for, has gone. Low salary, high credit card debt. If Henry throws enough money at her—" "No," Derek shook his head violently. "She may have left us, but she wouldn't destroy her own daughter for money." "Are you sure?" The question hung in the air. The truth was, Derek wasn't sure. He had once thought he knew Emily, the woman he'd planned a future with. But she had left, walked away from a hearing-impaired child because she had not signed up for this life. If she could do that, what else was she capable of? "We have to prepare for the worst," Helena said. "James is assembling a defensive file. My mother is ready to testify about your parenting. Zoe's school will confirm she's happy and well cared for. And if Emily shows up to say I'm unfit—" Derek couldn't finish. Helena took his hand. "Then we fight. I won't let Henry take your daughter, I promise." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." Helena stepped closer, her voice resolute. "I'll use every resource to protect you and Zoe. Every lawyer, every connection, every dollar if needed. Henry thinks he wins with money? I have more money, and unlike him, I'm willing to spend it on what's right." Derek looked deep into those hazel green eyes, filled with determination and something deeper. Love. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do you do all this? Risk your career, your reputation, possibly your company, for a janitor and his hearing-impaired daughter?" "Because," Helena's voice caught, "I spent my life building an empire, thinking success was everything. Then I met a man who refused $5 million on principle. A father who sleeps on the floor so his child has a soft bed. A person who would rather be poor than compromise his values." She paused, wiping away a tear. "And I realized, all money and power are meaningless if they're not used to protect people like you, good people crushed by the world." "Helena!" "I love you, Derek." The words burst out like a dam breaking. "I know it's crazy. We've only known each other a few weeks, but I can't help feeling this way. Seeing you and Zoe, watching you fight upstream, I see the kind of person I want beside me. The person who makes me want to be better." Derek was speechless. Too many emotions crashing over him. Astonishment, happiness, fear. "You don't have to say anything," Helena rushed on. "Just know why I'm fighting, not out of obligation or pity, but because I can't imagine my life without you and Zoe." "Helena," Derek finally found his voice, "for 3 years I've convinced myself I didn't deserve love. I failed. As an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a man. The only thing that kept me from going under was Zoe." He reached up and touched her cheek. "Then you showed up. You didn't see me as a failure. You saw someone worth fighting for. You gave me what I thought I'd lost forever. Hope." "Derek, let me finish." He smiled, tears spilling over. "I love you, Helena Harrington. I love your strength and your kindness, the way you treat your mother like a queen, the way you kneel to Zoe's level to sign, the way you're willing to risk everything for what's right." They kissed. Not the tentative kiss from before, but a committed one. A promise. Whatever happens, they will face it together. When they pulled apart, both were laughing and crying. "So we're doing this," Helena said. "Against Henry." "Against everything together," Derek nodded. Suddenly Mrs. Ruth appeared and signed, "Have you two kissed yet? If not, you're too slow." Helena and Derek burst out laughing, pure, relieving laughter. "My mother can't keep a secret," Helena shook her head. "I like that about her," Derek smiled. But before they could prepare for the legal battle, Henry struck again. Friday morning, the Los Angeles Times ran a front-page story. Harrington Capital CEO accused of favoritism. Romantic involvement with plaintiff in suit against business partner. The article, based on anonymous sources, painted Helena as a woman ruled by emotion, with an inappropriate relationship, with a service worker with a past allegedly involving embezzlement. It implied the entire lawsuit was personal revenge, not justice. Worse, there were photos. Helena and Derek standing on the balcony of the rental. A private moment. Someone had been watching. Someone had taken the shot. Helena's phone exploded. Investors demanded explanations. The board called an emergency meeting. Reporters swarmed the headquarters. That afternoon, the board met. This time there was no cautious support, only anger. "This is a PR disaster." Richard Cole slammed the newspaper on the table. "Helena, you've turned Harrington Capital into a joke." "I've turned it into a company with principles," Helena replied. "There's a difference." "Principles don't pay dividends," Richard barked. "You're romantically involved with the plaintiff, a blatant conflict of interest." "I met Derek after deciding to investigate Henry," Helena said calmly. "My personal relationship did not affect my business judgment." "The market disagrees. The stock is down 12% since this morning." "That's a short-term reaction. When the truth about Henry comes out—" "If the truth comes out," Richard shot to his feet, face flushed. "Henry's made you the villain. Now every accusation looks like a lover's vendetta. You destroyed your own credibility." The room fell silent, because Richard had a point, and everyone knew it. "What do you want me to do?" Helena asked quietly. "Quit? Let Henry win?" "We want you to step down." One member, Sarah Winters, whom Helena had considered an ally, spoke up. "Temporarily. Until the scandal blows over." Helena felt the ground tilt. "You're pushing me out." "Not firing. Paid leave, 6 months," Sarah offered weakly. "If I refuse?" "We'll vote to remove you," Richard said coldly. "Helena, you built this firm. Don't let it collapse over a man. Derek is not a man. He's the victim of fraud. If we turn away, we're no different from Henry Very Noble," Richard sneered, "but unrealistic. This is business. Sometimes you have to cut your losses." Helena looked around. 7 faces. 5 lowered their eyes, avoiding her gaze. Only James and 1 other looked at her with helpless sympathy. "Fine," Helena said at last. "I'll take a leave." Audible sighs of relief. "But," she continued, her voice like steel, "the lawsuit against Henry Kim continues. Whether my name is on it or not, James will represent Derek Thompson. And if anyone obstructs this, I will pull all my shares and watch this firm collapse." "Helena, this meeting is over." She stood and walked out without looking back. That evening, Helena went to Derek's rental, alone, eyes reddened, utterly exhausted. "They forced me to take a leave," she said simply. A boulder of guilt settled in Derek's gut. "Helena, I'm sorry. I never wanted—" "Don't," she cut him off. "Don't apologize. I chose this, and I would choose it again. But your firm—" "Just a firm. It can be rebuilt." She closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. "But if I let Henry win, if I quit now, I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror again." 30 years, she whispered, head in her hands. "I built Harrington Capital from nothing, and in 1 week, everything fell apart." Derek sat beside her, holding her. "Not everything. You still have yourself. You still have what you believe, and you," Helena said softly against his shoulder. "I still have you." They sat for a long time, holding each other in the dark, listening to the street outside and each other's breathing. "What do we do now?" Derek asked. Helena lifted her head, wiping her tears. "Now we fight. But not Henry's way, not in the shadows, not with PR tricks, not with personal attacks." "How then?" "Step into the light. Tell the whole story. On television if necessary. No concealment, no shame. Only the truth. You mean. I mean everyone will know about Zoe, about Emily, and about how you lived these 3 years." Helena squeezed his hand. "I know that's your private life. But Derek, That's the most powerful weapon. The true story of a good man crushed by ambition. Derek thought of Zoe, of the whole world knowing she was hearing impaired, knowing her mother left, knowing her father is a janitor. A part of him wanted to shield her, but another part, the part that had fought for 3 years, the part that had just seen hope in Helena's eyes, knew that sometimes painful truth is the price you pay to buy justice. "All right," he said. "We'll do it." The interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday on 60 Minutes, America's most prestigious investigative program. Journalist Laura Hahn had been following the case and saw the story behind the sensational headlines. Live broadcast, James reminded them during prep, about 20 million viewers. They'll ask everything: Emily, Zoe, even the relationship between you and Helena. You need to be truly ready. "I'm ready," Derek replied, though his hands still trembled slightly. Helena sat beside him, squeezing his hand. "We're doing this together." "I'll be right next to you." "And I will too," an unexpected voice said. Mrs. Ruth walked in, followed by Miguel Santos. "I want to tell my story as well," Miguel said, "about how I stayed silent. And how silence hurts good people." Derek was choked up. A week earlier, he'd thought he was completely alone. Now he had a whole team by his side. The night before the broadcast, Derek couldn't sleep. He lay on the mattress on the floor, listening to Zoe's steady breathing on the bed and thinking about tomorrow. At 2 a.m., his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Derek, it's Emily. We need to talk." Right now, he shot up, heart pounding. 3 years without contact, and on the very night before the biggest interview of his life, Emily appeared. He called Helena. "Emily wants to see me." "Don't go alone," Helena said firmly. "It could be a trap. Henry may have bought her off, or she really wants to talk." "Derek, I need to know, Helena. I have to hear it from her directly." He looked over at Zoe, sleeping soundly. "If Emily plans to testify against me tomorrow, I have to be prepared." They met at a 24/7 cafe in West Hollywood. Derek arrived with Helena and James, both for protection and as witnesses. Emily was already seated in a corner. 3 years hadn't taken her beauty, but her eyes were etched with fatigue, something makeup couldn't hide. "Derek," she stood, unsure whether to hug him. In the end, she stopped short. "Emily?" His voice was colder than he intended. "What do you want?" "I heard about the interview, the lawsuit, and that Henry Kim has reached out." Derek's stomach tightened. "How much did he offer?" Emily flinched. "You think I came for money?" "You once left our daughter to pursue an easier life. So yes, I think money could make you do anything." The verbal slap made Emily recoil. Tears welled. "I deserve that. I know, if you intend to testify against me—" "I'm not," Emily rushed to say, her voice shaking. "That's why I called. Henry offered $200,000 for me to testify that you're an unfit father, that Zoe isn't safe with you. And I told him to get lost." Emily wiped her tears. "I've done terrible things. I left you. I left our child. I chose the easy road, instead of being the mother of a child with special needs. Those things will haunt me for the rest of my life." She looked up, eyes red. "But I'm not a monster. I know you love Zoe more than anything. You are the best father she could have. I will never say otherwise, no matter what anyone pays." Derek felt the defensive walls inside him crumble. "Why? Why speak up now?" "Because I understand silence is complicity." Emily choked up. "For 3 years I left you alone, let Zoe grow up without a mother. I thought disappearing was best. Turns out, it was cowardice." She pulled out an envelope. This is a recording of my conversation with Henry. He offered me money to lie on the witness stand. He explicitly said he wants to take Zoe from you, to force you to drop the suit. James opened the envelope, listened quickly. His face lit up. This is evidence of obstruction of justice and witness tampering. Combined with what we have, this is a knockout blow. Emily turned to Helena. You're Helena Harrington. Yes. Thank you, Emily said sincerely, for doing what I should have done. For standing by Derek, Helena only nodded. There was nothing to add. Emily looked at Derek. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'll be there tomorrow. I'll tell the truth, that I abandoned my family, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. Derek Thompson is the best man I've ever known. Zoe is lucky to have him as her father. Emily. Derek didn't know what to say. I'm not asking to be absolved, she stood. I just want to finally do one right thing. For our daughter, Emily left. The three sat in silence. She seems sincere, Helena said softly. She is, Derek sighed. But that doesn't erase 3 years. No, Helena took his hand. But maybe it's a beginning. Everyone deserves a second chance, Derek, even those who once hurt us. CBS Studio in Los Angeles. Under the blazing lights, Derek sat across from Laura Hahn, aware that 20 million people were watching. Beside him, Helena, Miguel, and, unexpectedly, Emily. In the audience, Zoe with Mrs. Ruth. The girl didn't understand everything, but she knew her father was doing something very important. Mr. Thompson, Laura began, 3 years ago you were the co-founder of a promising fintech company. Today, you work the night shift as a janitor. What happened? Derek told it all. Quantum Edge, Henry Kim, the embezzlement allegations, Emily leaving, 3 years in the dark. His voice trembled at first, then grew steadier as the story flowed. He hid nothing. The shame, the nights crying in the bathroom while he thought Zoe slept, even the moments he wanted to give up, to disappear, because life was too heavy. What kept you going? Laura asked softly. Derek looked toward Zoe. My daughter, he signed, even as he spoke in English. Every morning, her smile reminds me to be strong. Not for me, for her. Seeing her father sign, Zoe signed back. I love you, Daddy. The studio went silent. Even the crew hardly breathed. Laura turned to Miguel. Mr. Santos, why did you stay silent for 3 years? Miguel spoke about his cowardice, choosing financial safety over what was right, about the day he saw Sarah Chen treated the same way Derek had been, and how he could no longer stay silent. I'll live with this guilt for the rest of my life, Miguel said. But at least now, I can live with myself. Then came Emily's turn. Laura did not pull her punches. Ms. Martinez, 3 years ago you left your husband and your hearing-impaired daughter. Why? Emily didn't make excuses. Because I was a coward. I wasn't strong enough to face a future different from the plan. I looked at my daughter as a problem to solve instead of a child who needed love. Tears spilled. But I'm here today to say, Derek Thompson is the best father and the best man I've ever known. Anyone who says he's unfit, they are completely wrong. Finally, Helena. The question everyone wanted asked, Ms. Harrington, you risked your career, your reputation, even your company for Mr. Thompson. Some say you're ruled by emotion. How do you respond? Helena looked directly into the camera, her voice steady as steel. I respond that we live in a world where caring about justice is labeled emotional, where protecting victims is called bias, where love is seen as a weakness instead of a source of strength. She paused a beat. I've spent 30 years building Harrington Capital, and I'm proud of that. But if I have to choose between the firm and what's right, I will choose what's right, every time. Because in the end, what defines us isn't money or titles, but the times we stood up for what we believe. And Mr. Thompson? Laura asked. Do you love him? Helena turned to Derek and smiled. I love him. I love his courage, his kindness, the way he loves his daughter. And I am not ashamed of that. The interview ended with Derek hugging Zoe, Helena standing by his side. For the first time in 3 years, Derek felt he no longer had to hide. Public reaction came fast and fierce. Within 24 hours, #JusticeForDerek climbed to #1 on Twitter. Millions shared the story, demanding that Henry Kim be held accountable. Tech giants, Google, Microsoft, Apple, simultaneously emphasized ethics in the industry. Several CEOs publicly pulled any collaborations connected to Henry. The heaviest blow came from the Patent Office. After reviewing the file James Porter submitted, they suspended all 17 patents under Henry's name to investigate fraud. Without patents, Quantum Edge had nothing. Investors pulled out, clients canceled contracts. Within a week, the empire Henry had built on lies collapsed. Henry Kim was arrested for fraud, theft of intellectual property, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. 3 months later, the trial opened. Derek sat in the gallery, holding Helena's hand, watching the man who had once been his friend, who had destroyed his life, stand before the judge. Henry Kim, Judge Melissa Grant said, her voice cold as steel, you systematized fraud for years, destroying the lives of those who trusted you. You built wealth on the pain of others. Henry stood silent, face expressionless, but his shoulders trembled slightly. Sentence: 7 years in federal prison, $12 million in restitution to the victims, and prohibition from engaging in business activities for 10 years after release. The gavel struck. Curtain down. As he was led away, Henry looked back at Derek one last time. No more arrogance, no triumphant smile, only the realization that in the end, justice had arrived. A year passed, and Derek's life changed in ways he hadn't dared to dream. From the restitution, plus the restoration of authorship on the patents, Derek founded a new company, Thompson Technologies. Not flashy, but his, truly his. Miguel Santos became CTO. Sarah Chen, the engineer Henry had once railroaded, became head of AI. And Helena? After leaving Harrington Capital, this time voluntarily, she became a strategic advisor to Thompson. I spent 30 years building an empire for myself, she said, when Derek asked why. Now I want to build something that means something. They married in the spring in Mrs. Ruth's garden. Zoe was the little bridesmaid, signing the vows for them both. Emily came too, not as an honored guest, just as a mother who wanted to witness her daughter's happiness. Mrs. Ruth, of course, cried from beginning to end, signing to anyone who would watch. I told you so from the start. Zoe, now 9, attended a wonderful inclusive school, with friends and teachers who understood. Most importantly, she had a family. Daddy, she signed at dinner in the new house, big enough that everyone had a room of their own. Can I ask something? Of course, Princess. Is everything better now than before? Derek looked around the table. Helena smiling at one of Mrs. Ruth's stories, candles swaying, the smell of food they had cooked themselves. Yes, sweetheart, he signed. Much better. Because we're rich now? Derek laughed. Not because of that. Because we don't have to hide anymore. Because I get to be myself. Because we have a family. In the true sense, Zoe nodded solemnly. I like it better this way. That night, After Zoe fell asleep, Derek and Helena stood on the balcony of the new house. Not as big as Helena's old mansion, but it was theirs, looking down at the city. "Do you regret it?" Helena asked. "All of it?" "The 3 lost years?" Derek thought. "I can't say I'm glad it happened, but it taught me who's worth trusting, who matters. And it brought me to you." "Diplomatic answer," Helena laughed. "Honestly?" Derek turned to her, serious. "If I could avoid it all, the pain, the shame, 3 years in the dark, but it meant never meeting you, never learning I'm stronger than I thought, never seeing Zoe become the brave girl she is today, I wouldn't trade it." "You'd choose the pain." "I choose the journey. Because it brought me here." He kissed her forehead. "To a home, to a family, to you." Helena leaned into him, and they stood listening to the city. "Funny, isn't it?" she said softly. "Henry thought destroying you meant winning. In truth, he freed you to become who you were meant to be." Derek considered it and realized she was right. At Quantum Edge, he'd been swept into the race. Money, status, proving himself. At Thompson, he was building something meaningful. A company that treated people fairly, where innovation wasn't built on deceit. "Remember the first night we met?" Derek asked. "When I signed with your mother?" "How could I forget?" That night changed everything. I used to think, here's a woman out of my league. And I'm just a janitor you'd never look at twice. But I did look, Helena smiled, and I saw a decent man, a devoted father, a person who refused to break under circumstance. And I saw a woman who dared to risk everything for what's right, who taught me that love isn't a weakness. They kissed, not dramatically, but the kiss of people who have fought together, fallen together, and then risen together. A sound came from the bedroom. Derek went in to find Zoe sitting up, worried. "What is it, Princess?" "I dreamed about before, the tiny room, when you were always sad." Derek sat beside her. "That's over. We're not going back. Promise?" "I promise," he signed, then added, "And do you know why I can promise?" "Because now we have a family. We have Helena. We have Mrs. Ruth. We have so many people who love us. We're not alone anymore." Zoe thought for a moment, then signed, "Now I have Mommy Helena." Derek's heart clenched, not with pain, but with happiness. "If that's what you want to call her, then do. Helena loves you like her own. I know." Zoe smiled, lay down. "You can go now. I'm sleeping. I have a math test tomorrow." Derek kissed her forehead, turned out the light, and stepped back outside. "She called you Mom," he whispered. Helena's eyes lit up. "Really?" And she said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Maybe, to her it is." Helena laughed, wiping away tears. "God, I didn't think I'd cry over this." "You're a mom now," Derek hugged her. "Welcome to the team." Terrible hours, low pay, but the emotional benefits are priceless. They stood in the quiet hallway, listening to Zoe's steady breathing, and both felt that they were home. 6 months later, Thomson Technologies launched its first product, a trading algorithm platform built on ethics and transparency. "We believe technology must serve people," Derek said on stage before investors, clients, and the press. "And success means nothing if it's built on lies." He paused, looking out over the audience. 4 years ago, I lost everything to someone who exploited trust. I lived in the dark, thinking life was over. Today, I stand here, not just as a CEO, but as someone who understands that failure isn't an ending. It's the beginning of something better. Applause thundered, but Derek looked only to the front row, where Helena sat with Zoe and Mrs. Ruth. I've also learned that family isn't just blood, he continued. It's the people who stay when it's hard, who believe in you when the world doubts, who love you for who you are. After the launch, when the crowd had thinned, they stood on the building's rooftop. "You did great, Daddy," Zoe signed. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Princess," Mrs. Ruth signed, smiling warmly. "I knew from the start you'd get back up." "Good people always do." "Not always," Derek signed back. "But this time, because of all of you." Helena stood beside him, looking out at the city, the same city where, 4 years ago, everything fell apart. Now, everything was different. Not because the city had changed, but because they had. "Did you ever think we'd be here?" she asked. "No. Never," Derek laughed. 4 years ago, if someone had told me I'd marry a billionaire CEO, have my own company, and a happy Zoe, I'd have said they were crazy. And if someone had told me I'd walk away from Harrington Capital for a man who once mopped floors, Helena chuckled, I'd have shown them the door. And yet, here we are. "Yes, here we are," Helena repeated, resting her head on his shoulder. Zoe ran up, tugging both their hands. "Daddy, Mom, can we go home now?" "I'm hungry. Let's go." Derek smiled. As they left, an unusual family born from suffering and bound by love, Derek glanced back at the city one last time. Somewhere, Henry Kim sat in a cell, facing the consequences of his choices. Somewhere, Emily was rebuilding her life, living with her regret. Somewhere, many others were still fighting their own battles, believing they were alone. But those stories were for another day. Today, Derek Thompson, once a financial engineer, then a janitor, now a CEO, a father and a husband, just wanted to go home to his family. For the first time in 4 years, when he thought of home, he didn't see a cramped room and a mattress on the floor. He thought of laughter, of meals around the table, of Zoe signing stories from school, of Helena wearing the reading glasses she hated to admit she needed, of Mrs. Ruth adding one more dish to the spread. He thought of love, and that was enough. People ask if I hate Henry Kim. The answer is no. Hatred requires energy I'd rather spend on those I love. People ask if I regret the years I lost. The answer is complicated. I regret the pain Zoe had to witness, but I don't regret the journey, because it taught me who I am. And if you ask what I want people to remember from this story, I want them to remember that no one is invisible. No one is alone. Sometimes the rightest thing is to believe in someone when the whole world doesn't. Because that's what Helena did for me, and that made all the difference. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more stories that touch the heart. Thank you for watching to the end. See you in the next video.